Hey, I love the book of Daniel and the 21 days of prayer. And for a lot of people, prayer and fasting has been unique. I hope you'll share your story, maybe your plan, what you're doing, your place where you go and have your time with the Lord and the process. And we tried to give you every tool possible on our app to help you. And I hope you've taken that very seriously. Maybe share some stories of what God has done in you and saying to you. Because Daniel really is a person that shows us how to live well in Babylon. And Babylon is a place that is consumed with comfort and pleasure. And part of 21 days of prayer is to help you feel some discomfort, to realize how much we are drawn to pleasure. Today we're in the most famous chapter of the Bible, Daniel chapter 6. And it's a story that you've heard over and over. You've probably heard it 100 times. It's probably been told 1 billion times about Daniel in the lion's den. But I want you to see it differently, because we're going to talk about what for most people I think is a dirty four-letter word, and it's work. So how do you feel about your work? How do you feel about Monday morning? Do you look forward to Monday, or do you dread it, or, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, TGIF? How do you feel about, for a lot of places, if you get close to the parking lot at 5 o'clock, you can get killed because people are ready to get out of prison. They're ready to be paroled. And so I want to show you something in the Bible in Daniel chapter 6 that is really a powerful verse that will help you understand how Daniel overcame all the obstacles. He was not a preacher. He was not a prophet. Matter of fact, he was a politician for a foreign government that he didn't like. And so he has every reason in the world to hate his job. He was kidnapped. He was groomed. He was forced into a job. And yet we see something in Daniel chapter 6 that stands out to me that's more important than even Daniel in the lion's den. So Daniel chapter 6, verse 1, it pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel, and the satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities, not his faith in God, his exceptional qualities, that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Here's a Jewish guy in Babylon. He is about to rise to be over the whole kingdom of Babylon. And at this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. And finally, these men said, we will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of God. They said, he is so good at what he does. He's got such integrity, such character. The only way we will find any way to knock him off the platform is to find something about his faith and to trap him. And so what they do is they get the king to sign a decree. And the decree is nobody can bow or worship anyone, any god, except Darius, this new Persian king. He's about 60 years old. He's going to come to an end, of course. And Daniel hears about it. So this is how Daniel responds in verse 10. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem, and 3 times a day he got down on his knees and he prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. And then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying, of course. They knew he was going to be there, asking God for help. So they went to the king and they spoke to him about his royal decree. They said, did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god, any human, except to you, your majesty, should be thrown in the lion's den? And he says, yes, I did. The decree stands in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed. And so Daniel was caught. And this is what happened in verse 19. He's thrown into the lion's den. These are hungry lions. They're ready for him. He's in the pit. In verse 19 it says, at the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den, When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice. He said, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you serve continually been able to rescue from the lions? And Daniel answered, may the king live forever. My God sent his angel and he shut the mouths of the lions. They've not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done anything wrong before you, your majesty. And the king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him because he had trusted in God. And so the king took all of his co-workers, and you would love this, threw them into the den, and they were all eaten by lions and their families. And you're going, wow, like that's a great story, but how does that apply to me? Well, the way it applies to you is that when you're working, wherever you're working, that's not a pit, that's not a prison. That's your platform. And so I want you to think about that, because a lot of you may be like me during different seasons of my work. I mean, there have been times in my work where I've been discouraged. There have been times in my work where, man, I was criticized. There have been times in my work where I was, negative. And throughout the book of Daniel, man, I've read through it, Daniel never complained. I mean, he's 80 years old. When they set him down, they didn't throw him into the pit because that could have probably killed him. He was so old, they had to let him down in the pit and then bring him back up. And for 80 years, he worked and he served. And you're like, how does somebody do that? I mean, like, how do you look at that and draw something from it? Well, this is what Paul says in the New Testament. A lot of people love the New Testament. They're both important. Here's what Paul says about work in Colossians 3:23, 24. He says, whatever you do, maybe you're working in the drive-thru. Maybe you're sweeping floors. Maybe you're an orderly at the hospital. Maybe you're working on the side of the road picking up paper. Maybe you're a CEO. Maybe you're CFO. He says, but whatever you do, he says, work at it with all of your heart as working for the Lord and not for humans, since you know you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Man, I love that. And there have been many times in my work where it's been so brutal for me that I've had to remind myself, I don't work for this person. I work for God. And he deserves my very best every single day. And every single day I get up and go, hey, God, today, I try to do this every day. God, will you help me serve you well? God, would you help me turn some difficulties into a platform so I can make you known? I love what Martin Luther King Jr. says. He said, if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures, like Shakespeare wrote poetry, like Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets so well that all the host of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. Listen, God's got a plan for you. And if you'll trust him, and if you will work and you'll be positive and you will learn, hey, this is not something I'm doing for these people. I'm doing this for the Lord. He will take you to a new level. He'll turn your pit into a platform. Blessings to all of you.